Is it all right if I take one of these waters, Chris?
No, go for it.
Oh.
They're there for that.
Are they real?
Yeah. All right. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Coach, your thoughts on today's results?
Well, when I said in the pre-game that this was going to be a tight one, I didn't expect it to be quite as frustrating as the evening was. Two very, very sound defensive teams. From our point of view, not enough creativity and a fall below the standards in terms of quality at home. The frustrations will certainly be that I felt as though Seattle certainly looked like they were vulnerable, and it was from the touchline a possible 3 points in the making, but the disappointments I'm sure will be double in the morning when I realised that we didn't take advantage of it.
Thank you, Coach. We are going to open the floor for questions. We'll kick it off with Ben Wright. Ben?
Yeah, Gary, just looking through the numbers, I think 5 total shots. That looks like the second fewest ever at home.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you mentioned Seattle being a tough defensive team, but overall it just felt like the passing was off. There were kind of sloppy touches all around.
Yeah.
Does that concern you all at this point in the season?
Yeah, of course. I think I said in the media leading into this that these final 4 home games especially were an opportunity for us to try and find some fluidity, some confidence, and maybe even some momentum taking us into what we certainly hope will be a post-season. I believe at the moment it is, but challenging for what I believe the group are capable of, which is a higher spot as well. I think what we saw out there tonight, and I'll have a little bit more time to maybe dissect the game and think about some of the things that went on, but Sam's not had a lot of football. First start for Randall in a long time. Thought he looked very bright, but trying to find those connections, trying to create the right sort of creative moments against a well-drilled and certainly a very sound, no pun intended, but a very well-organised group and very difficult for us to break down. But to your point, Ben, I thought we were certainly capable of better quality, and there were just far too many occasions where I thought we got lulled into slow build-up and ponderous play, and quite frankly, the more we had the ball, the more likelihood there was of a mistake being made, and that's the way that the game really unfolded. And I thought we just missed some opportunities in the early and central stages of the game to take advantage down the sides of their centre-backs, be a little bit more purposeful. Jacob's inclusion in the game was minimal, and that's certainly down to some good defending on their part, but we've got to do more. We have to work the ball quicker, and certainly Jacob has to, be thoughtful maybe a little bit more about how he can get in the game. But they're all challenges that I'm hoping we can improve as we go into Wednesday's game and of course the final 4 games. But I think the feeling will be frustration more than being worried. Frustration about how the game's unfolded and what more we maybe could have done to have affected that.
Thank you, Coach. Valer, go ahead.
Gary, you had a little bit, at stretches of the game, Seattle let you have a little bit more of the ball, kind of like you mentioned. Do you think that this group has a little bit of problem when they're not playing in transition, because they are very good in transition, but do you think you have a little bit of problem creating when you have the ball? And what can you do to solve that this late in the season?
Yeah, look, I think for all teams, identity and mindsets are very, very important. If you look at the last 2 games we played at home, maybe that's not true. We weren't great on the ball against Charlotte, but I do believe in the last 2 or 3 games that we've played. Kansas, certainly in the San Jose games, and longer periods of possession and control. And you could say something very similar tonight. But what's happened is there's been slow transitions as we've won the ball back. It's gone backwards instead of forwards. There's been a lot of support and overload behind the ball instead of into positive areas. And I think the key right now is to try and find that balance again. You know, how can we find a sparkle Wednesday night? You know, what does that look like? That's down to me as much as anyone. But it's also a challenge for the players. You know, mentally, what position do I have to be in? And also, athletically, what are the challenges that I've got to present to Orlando on Wednesday? So that'll be part of the process as we work through towards the game on Wednesday against a side that are in very good form.
Gary, how much of the, is it too early to say how much of your early tactical drawing before the game with the guys stayed on the table tonight?
I think there were some things, Claudio, actually, that the guys took on board really well. Some of the build-out play, some of the management of the ball. But there's a fine line between just managing the ball, of course, and bridging that gap between breaking lines and being creative. When you're breaking those lines, the speed of play, the supporting angles, the quality of your play in tighter areas, which Seattle had made clear to us was going to be more difficult, has to be cleaner, has to be brighter. There needs to be more enthusiasm and a spark there from certainly certain individuals. That was missing to a large degree. There were I thought, some good moments in the opening exchanges. We had some overloads down the right-hand side. Shaq looked very bright. He got into some good areas. The pressure, I thought, if I'm not mistaken, started to build a little bit in that first 15 minutes. 4 corners, some areas that we could take advantage of. But again, without looking back at the stats, in any wide areas, how many times did we connect or find a final ball that asked a question? So there's another technical pitfall, if you like, from the group. The enthusiasm to get there, the energy to get there wasn't missing, but the final ball was. And I think, you know, it's an easy cliche. The final ball went astray on too many occasions. I also think there were some connecting passes in that middle of the midfield that we should have and could have done better with as well. And probably the biggest piece of the puzzle was we just got bogged down and the play was too slow. We could have been slightly sharper and brighter with the way that we worked the ball and the questions that we asked.
Thank you, Coach. Ben Wright.
Yeah, Gary, I know we've talked a lot about kind of the discrepancy in what we saw from the team in Leagues Cup and in MLS. I'm just curious, kind of as you're getting close to crunch time here with just a couple games left in the regular season, are you concerned at all at how
You just asked me that.
Just how different
That's
things
twice.
look? Yeah. I mean,
Does that mean you're concerned?
I think it's a fair question.
I think it's a fair question. I'm just being pedantic.
No,
Like I said, I don't think there's a concern. There's certainly some frustration, as I've said, and I think that is emotionally driven as well by disappointment. Because, as I said from the very outset, this was a game I felt we should have and could have won. I don't think Seattle were at their best at all with the ball. They squandered as many moments in the final third as we did. And whilst I'm not, checking on numbers with them, it's far more important for us, of course. But, we certainly didn't take advantage of a team that are missing a couple of important players. And is the start of a 4 out of 5 game homestand, if you like. I think the key here is with 3 games left at home and some important games. You know, Seattle are going to be in a very good spot in the Western Conference. So let's not take anything away from what they're capable of. There's a lot of players out there as well that have been in that position multiple times. They've won silverware. They know what it means and what it takes to earn points, to keep ticking over and put themselves in as good a position as possible for the postseason. The challenge for us, Wednesday, away to Philly on Saturday, and then New England especially the following Saturday, is that we're now running into 3 teams that are in slightly more favourable positions than we are. Teams that are going to be seriously in the shake-up come post-season, and will have, you know, the 3 teams I've mentioned there will have a big say in where those final playoff games go. I think it's, you know, safe to say that we all want to be competing and challenging those teams, and I think tonight is an example of it. If the game had ended up 0-0 and we'd played well and it had looked bright and we'd have created chances, I'd have felt a lot better, as you would have, about the way the game's gone. But the next 3 games for us, I think emotionally, as much as anything else, are going to determine how we go into the off-season, into the post-season. It will do. There's no doubt about it. We want to be in a better spot. We want to be feeling more confident about our play, and we have the opportunity to do that. Tonight certainly wasn't good enough. Fortunately, there's not been too many of those, but there is no doubt it wasn't up to the sort of standard that we know we're capable of.
Okay, we have time for 2 more short questions. We're gonna go with Nick with the gentleman.
Gary, you mentioned heavy legs with Claudia's question, and then also you mentioned Sam early on in the press conference about getting more minutes on the pitch. In the Leagues Cup, you had a lot of success with Sam coming off the bench, and could, in this case, going forward, could it be less to be more in that case for Sam?
I think it's a fair question, but I think I'd throw back at you this. If we can get Sam up to speed and we can get him, firing on all cylinders or close to it, a bit sharper in his match play, I think for all sorts of different reasons, it keeps that competition within our front line going. And my hope is what we saw in Leagues Cup and what he achieved in front of goal is something that we can see a little bit more often. He's certainly working as hard as he can, having had a problem and having not trained an awful lot to put himself in as good a spot as he can. But no, make no mistake, the next steps are going to certainly try to be to get him up to speed. But I certainly don't want to put him in a position where we create a different problem, because he hasn't had a lot of work and he hasn't played a lot of minutes. And I know that he's keen and hungry to stay out there longer. He's bitterly disappointed he came off after an hour. But he's gone what was effectively 10 or 15 minutes in Kansas, 30 minutes in San Jose, and he's played an hour tonight. So we're on track, but that doesn't mean to say somebody's exactly where you want them to be. It's one example of some of those guys we've got to manage, but I think you're going to hear it from every coach. Can we get as healthy a group towards the postseason games in as good a place as possible? To Ben's point, in as good a place as possible. There are fine lines between the balance of the group, maybe the best team, maybe the best group that goes out there, but there's also 3 games this week, and it makes all the sense in the world not to push certain players and lose them.
Another question.
You mentioned previously about the 3-game stretch that's coming up. How do you mentally prepare your team for that?
I honestly don't think the guys in that locker room will have a problem mentally preparing for that. I do think, in answering 1 or 2 questions over this side of the room, how do we get ourselves in a mental position and a physical position that we're asking some questions again, that we're utilising our home field and taking advantage of you know, some of the qualities that we have in the past, the crowd that we have here, the opportunities that we have to earn points here. And for the most part, it's going to be the very best opportunity to build some confidence as well.
Thank you, Coach. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you taking the time. We're now going to open the local